My sister is so jealous of everything I do. So what? I'm about to get married. It doesn't mean she has to be the center of attention. This is my special day. Well, you guys won't believe what my jealous sister decides to do at my engagement party. Let me show ya. I have a story of sibling rivalry that will beat any story of sibling rivalry that you have heard before. My parents had me first, and then my sister Andrea followed about 2 years later. It became apparent that once Andrea could talk, she loved attention on her. If my sister was unable to get the attention, then she would scream and cry until she got it. Andrea's favorite way to get the attention was to feign illness. She would pretend to be sick, hurt, or anything similar to that. When this stopped working, then Andrea would just act badly, doing some of the meanest and most annoying things you could ever think of. Eventually, my parents would wise up and my sister would go back to feigning illness. It was this revolving door of Andrea trying to take attention away from me. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. Normally, it worked on my mother and more than my father. Andrea was a girly girl, so the two of them had a lot in common. I was more of a tomboy. This was not to say that my mother did not get along or spend quality time together, but she felt more of a kinship with Andrea. I was a little closer to my father and shared some of his interests, so it kind of evened him out. My sister Andrea was the worst when I had a big achievement of events. For example, birthdays were the worst. I ended up just wanting to go out separately with my father, or when I was older, hang out with my friends. It wasn't worth the drama Andrea was going to cause. On my high school graduation, Andrea fainted, or rather pretended to faint. When I was off the stage, she seemed to recover almost instantly, and it was insane. I didn't talk to my sister for the rest of the summer and was thrilled to be able to go to college across the country. This gave me a chance to get away from her and my parents and to forge my own path. Whenever I could come home on the holidays, it was the same old bullcrap. I honestly stopped interacting with my sister and just never shared anything. This caused it to die down, but it was only because I took great pain to not have any interaction with Andrea. The relationship with my father and mother was all right, but it was strained. I kept my distance from them, so my younger sister was not going to try to cause any drama. It's a shame they did not nip it in the bud. They did, but my mom always seemed to undo it because of how much she just babied my little sister. Dad, he never wanted to rock the boat, so he went along with Mom. I don't know how frustrating it is to have your parents just refuse to take accountability for their children and discipline their behavior. Once I graduated college, I did end up moving back to my home state. I refused to live at home and got an apartment with some old friends who had also come back from college. The only way I would move back home was if I could find another place to live. I would only live with my family unless it was out of desperation. It was a shame that I felt this way, but Andrea still lived at home. Why would I want to subject myself to living with her again? I refused to be driven crazy by Andrea, who was still a terrible person. She didn't seem to ever want to grow up. My sister may have moved out of my parents' house, got a job, and been living on her own with friends, but she would never allow me to have our own parents' attention or anyone's, to be frank. If we were together, then she would make sure all the attention was on her. It was a shame that we could not have that sisterly bond I would see on TV, in movies, and in the people that I knew. The two of us should be spending time together, having fun and just doing sisterly activities. Whatever the hell that means, and by this point in life, I've long since accepted that my sister was not capable of it. Some people cannot change. Like I said, I did stay connected with my parents because they were my parents regardless. The only time I talked to my sister was when we were in the vicinity of each other. This could be us visiting our parents at the same time or just at the same event. Though, if I could help it, I tried very hard not to be the same place as my sister. I did the best thing I could do and tried my best to live my life. My college degree was in teaching, so I decided that I was going to get a teaching job in an elementary school. It wasn't that difficult to find an open teaching position in the same town where I lived. At the school I worked at, I made a lot of good friends. My fellow teachers were great. When we had breaks, we would spend time in the teacher's lounge just talking about everything and nothing. It was safe to say that my working life was pretty damn good. My personal life wasn't anything special. I did have great friends, but romance-wise, I didn't have anything going on. That's until school hired a new teacher for the third graders. His name, Matthew. And he was amazing. I had a crush on him from the first moment I laid my eyes on him. He was great. About 5 months after we met, he finally asked me out on a date. The romance was not one of those whirlwind ones. Taking it slow was important for me, and it seemed to be important for Matthew as well. The two of us dated for about a year and a half before we moved in with one another. I thought it was important to live with someone before becoming engaged or getting married, so that's what we did. We lived with each other for about a year before the topic of engagement arrived. Matthew and I were the type of couple to talk about it first. The two of us talked about it for a while until it was decided that Matthew was indeed going to propose. He ended up proposing to me during a romantic dinner. It was in the privacy of our own home, so I didn't have to worry about having an audience. The last thing I wanted to have people watching the proposal, well, it was too much pressure. Besides, it being just the two of us made it more intimate of a situation. I could only imagine if it were a party that our entire family was invited to. Andrea would do whatever she could to draw attention to herself. It would be such a nightmare. Matthew was warned about Andrea from the moment we started dating. I'd introduced him to my parents and Andrea, but the introduction with Andrea was very quick because I was afraid that she would pull her crap. Luckily, Matthew was not her type at all. My sister Andrea preferred guys that were more the bad boy vibe. Matthew was a little too nerdy for her tastings. He loved books. He was a homebody. This was the perfect person for me who loved to stay at home. I was so lucky to have found Matthew, and he felt the same way. With an engagement coming up, my parents were encouraging me to invite Andrea. She was my sister, and this was a chance for us to make amends. The two of us had not spent much time together in the past few years, so I had no idea if she was truly as bad as she used to be. Maybe, just maybe, she had changed her behavior in some way, and I didn't want to hold my breath because I knew I would just pass out from lack of oxygen. Still, to appease my parents, I did extend an invitation to Andrea. When she got the invitation, my sister expressed that she was very surprised, but told me that she was happy I was moving past being petty. Now, this should have been the first clue that she was up to something. The thing was, I was caught up being so happy in my upcoming nuptials that I decided to ignore that big giant red flag. She did not do or say anything else, so maybe that's why I so easily brushed it off without a care in the world. Then about 4 days before my engagement party, I started getting text messages from family and friends. My sister had been rushed to the hospital. They weren't sure what was wrong, and they were all doing sorts of tests to her. I automatically knew something was up because this was exactly what she had done in the past. However, I had no proof. I didn't bother trying to tell my family or friends that I thought she was faking it because they would not believe me. This was what happened in the past, so why would I think anything would change now? Eventually, I realized I was going to have to cancel it. I was an hour from canceling it when I received a strange text from someone I did not know. They said that they were a friend of Andrea. She had been out with the friends and a few others gloating about what she had done to me. The friend said that my sister admitted to faking illness just so she could ruin my engagement plans. Why? Just because she could not stand that I was going to have all this attention on me? Andrea said this to her group of friends, and however, I don't think much because this was just the word of a stranger. Then the unknown person sent me a video that she secretly recorded of my sister talking about this. My sister, she could have seen a certain point being talked about, and she was laughing and was not sick at all. Anybody could see it. I asked the woman how she got my number, and she said from a mutual friend. The mutual friend was a teacher I worked with at school, and this friend of Andrea had gone through a lot to get my number and get this information to me, which I did appreciate. So, I posted this to a group chat that did not include my sister. Reactions were a mix of shock and confusion. I asked everybody not to say anything and to act as if the engagement party was indeed off. Even my mother agreed to this, and she thought that it was about time my sister was taught a lesson. So, I was shocked that she was willing to go this far because You have to understand how much my mother always defends my sister. Never could Andrea do any wrong. The only problem with her was that she was misunderstood. Dad must have talked to Mom behind the scenes or something. At least I thought this was the case. Well, I never fully asked because I was afraid I would not like the answer. My party's set up to happen in 2 days now, and my sister is none the wiser. She's still faking this illness, unaware that everybody knows she's full of crap. It was difficult to keep the secret, but I was determined that my sister would learn about this party after seeing the pictures I put online. Oh, Andrea was going to be furious. She was going to be so mad that people were finally waking up and seeing the type of person she truly was. Throughout this all, Matthew was by my side. I was a little afraid this would scare him off, but he remained steadfast in his desire to still marry me. Was he a great guy or what? Update number 1. The engagement party was a success. Hey, I just wanted to pop on here to let you know the engagement party went off without a hitch. It was amazing, and it was great to celebrate my upcoming marriage with all my family and friends. Minus my sister, of course. We had some great food, danced, talked, and just had a grand old time. Matthew and I spent the next day just looking at pictures that we took and gushing how happy everybody looked. So I posted the pictures online to all my social media accounts, going so far as to tag my sister. It was petty, but I wanted my sister to know that she had not succeeded in getting my engagement party canceled. Oh, even though she tried so hard. This was probably the hardest that she's ever tried to ruin an important event in my life. The only thing that topped it was how she acted at my high school graduation. So, guys, I never invited my family to my college graduation, so that wasn't something I ever had to worry about. But enough about that, and back to my engagement photos. The reaction from my sister was immediate. She was someone who was glued to her phone, so she was probably getting alerts left and right when I was sending those pictures. Andrea was cursing me out on everything. Social media, text messages, emails, and to everybody who knew one another. My sister was also sending nasty messages to all of them. They were so shocked to see this side of my sister. They knew that she could be cruel since she faked being sick to ruin my engagement party. But this amount of anger to boot? It did not seem to make sense to them. Well, it made sense to me. I'd been dealing with this for my entire life. This was just who Andrea was and who she would ever be. My focus from then on was to plan my wedding. It was going to be happening at the end of the year and would be a modest wedding. I was so excited to be spending the rest of my life with Matthew soon. He was also thrilled to be doing the same with me. Andrea was blocked on absolutely everything. So I had no idea that she was truly handling all this either good or bad. So I heard bits and pieces from my father, who said that she spiraled for a while but then started begging for forgiveness. Suddenly, Andrea was seeking forgiveness from everybody she could contact. She also wanted to reach out to me and apologize, but I refused to talk with her. Andrea was, also just going to be blocked on all my social medias and my phone number. It was the best thing to do for my mental health. I knew that this behavior from Andrea was going to get my mom, who continued to have a soft spot for her baby girl. It was ridiculous that she still felt like there was no good left in Andrea. This had to be a ploy to ruin everything for me again, or rather try to ruin everything for me. If Andrea did mean it, then fine. That's good for her, but I was not going to forgive her. The ship has sailed. Update number 2. Just when you think you've gotten a toxic person out of your life, they show up at your wedding and cause a huge scene. Oh, that hasn't happened to you? Well, it just happened to me. If I were going to make an update, I thought it would just be me gushing about my wedding and how great it was. Now, the wedding was great, but this isn't what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about my sister Andrea showing up at the wedding. I did not invite her and had no intention of inviting her. When she showed up during the wedding reception, I thought my sister was crashing the wedding. But then I saw the look on my mother's face. My mom looked completely guilty, so I went over to my mother and started asking her why my sister was there.
So Mom admitted right there that she was the one who invited her because it was right to do it. She was my sister, and I could not have a wedding without a sister involved. Andrea promised she was not going to cause any trouble, yet about a half hour she starts claiming that she's dizzy. However, this time nobody's having it. It led to Andrea throwing a fit, saying it wasn't fair that I get all the attention. I almost wanted to ask her what she's smoking. But before I could say anything, my father approached her and slapped her clean across the face. Our parents were not the type to lay a hand on us. They were the type to give us other forms of discipline, so to see my father do that was shocking. Also, he stood up for me in a way I never thought that he would. My sister started shrieking, saying my father was cruel, and she stormed out of the wedding, and my father stopped Mom before she could go after her. Dad said that it wasn't fair to me or to go after Andrea when she was the one who did all of this to herself. I had to step out for a moment to catch my breath and get my head on straight. All of this was a lot. It was the type of drama I was trying to avoid having at my wedding, but since Andrea just had to show up and create as much drama as possible. So, Matthew stepped out with me and asked me if I was all right. I assured him that I was, but just needed a few minutes. Eventually, the two of us went back in and tried to enjoy the rest of our engagement party. It was hard because I felt like people were still talking about how my sister had just done. The rest of the wedding reception, though, was great. I was worried for nothing, and we went to the hotel, prepared to go on our honeymoon the next morning, but then I got the news. I was not expecting this. Andrea ends up getting into an accident on her way home from the wedding reception. After she stormed out of there, she got into a car and started driving like a maniac. My sister crashed into a telephone pole. She was injured, but it wasn't deadly. From what my parents told me, it was a surprise she managed to come out of it unscathed. I wasn't sure how to feel about it. I mean, according to the footage the police got, it truly was an accident. Andrea had not intended to crash the car at all. It put me in a very awkward position. Update number 3. Hey guys. So, here we go. Last time I updated you on the situation with my attention-seeking sister, I discovered that she got into an accident. The accident was an actual accident. She was just driving too fast, causing the car to get out of control, and well, because of the incident, Andrea ended up in the hospital with a broken leg. It was a miracle. That's all that she had wrong with her. I mean, I saw the car afterward, and it was totaled. Despite everything that my sister had done, I decided to visit my sister because she was truly sick or hurt at the time. When I walked into the hospital room, my sister's shocked to see me. She starts to cry, telling me that she was very sorry for what she did at my wedding, and Andrea did seem legitimately sorry. I wanted to tell her it was too late, but, However, I didn't. My honeymoon was postponed, but Matthew understood why this had to happen. He did ask me if I was sure of what I was doing, and I told him I was, because this was, the last attention I was ever going to give my sister. With my parents being, on the old side, they really could not care for Andrea well, so I offered to do it. She moved back in with my parents, but I would go there the day after to take care of her. I know Andrea was shocked, but she seriously did seem grateful. It did not mean I was going to change my mind. It made me more determined than ever to stick to it, and I did not tell Andrea yet because she was not going to take it well. Once I knew my sister was in the clear, then I would tell her that our relationship was now over. Andrea had done this to herself. If she had been willing to grow as a person and not constantly trying to take attention away from me just because she could, then it would have been different. The two of us were just never going to have that sisterly bond I've always wished for. I had close female friends, and Matthew had a sister who I'd grown close to since we started dating. She was more of a sister to me than my actual sister was. So, it took a few weeks for Andrea to be in the clear, but once I knew that she was, I sat down to have the difficult conversation with her. I told Andrea in no uncertain terms that I was done trying to have a relationship with her. From here on, I didn't want anything to do with her. We were sisters, by blood only. Andrea thought I was just being petty or simply blowing things out of proportion, but after she realized I was so serious, Andrea started begging me to not do this. We were sisters, and should be in each other's lives. Well, I refused. This led to my mother reaching out and begging me to reconsider. It was at this point I realized that I was going to have to cut ties with my mother and cut her out of my life as well. When I spoke to my father about this, I told him that I would keep having a relationship with him, only if he respected the fact that I wanted nothing to do with my mother or Andrea. He told me he's fine with that because he still wanted me to be in his life anyways. As long as my father respected this, then I saw no reason why I would have to cut him out of my life. Well, I'll update you guys again. Update number 4. Wow, I can't believe it's been 6 months since my last update. Lots happened and all of it has mostly been good. The last time I updated, I told y'all that I had to cut off my sister and mother for good out of my life. My father would be allowed to stay in my life so long as he respected the fact. Well, this continued to still be the case. Mom and Andrea did try to contact me desperately and go against my wishes. They kept texting, calling, messaging me on social media, though it was mostly my sister. Our mom wasn't exactly the most internet-savvy person out there. Eventually, I'd say the two of them would get sick of bothering me and just give up. Or so I thought. Andrea ended up coming to the apartment Matthew and I shared, and the two of us weren't home, but we caught it on Ring camera. It was at that point I realized a move has to be in order. So Matthew and I start looking into moving from the area. We ended up moving to the neighboring state where a former friend of ours had moved to. They got us a job and a good school and even helped us find a place to live. You don't know how grateful I was because I needed to put distance from everyone. My dad told me he was sad to see me go, but he understood why. He had admitted that he was considering separating from my mother, so I told him if he needed a place to stay, he could always stay with us. Matthew was more than fine with this. Moving states to get away from my sister and mother was not what I expected I would have to do, yet I saw no other choice. Sometimes you have to put your mental health first, regardless of if people were going to question your actions or not. If you're wondering, if Andrea and Mom took the news badly, then let me tell you they did. But once we were gone, that's it. Their numbers were blocked and there's no way they could easily visit unless they wanted to drive for hours or take a plane. I would occasionally get emails and phone calls from random numbers, but the more months that ticked by, the less often it happened. They were getting sick of hearing nothing from Matthew and me, leading to them finally moving on. There's no doubt that eventually they would pick it up again, but I did not think it would last long. They would once again give up and move on, and it's a shame my family's fractured like this, but now I'm married, and I'm ready to start my own family.
So, a lot of the commenters could agree on two things. The first thing that they were agreeing on was, it sucks that Andrea was involved in an accident and she broke her leg. Luckily, it wasn't worse, but still, that's devastating for anybody to have to go through. And even though Andrea was jealous and everything, even toxic, there were commenters saying she did not deserve that. That was the first thing that people can agree on. However, the second thing that people can agree on is Andrea was definitely toxic. And they hate to say it, but you know what? Maybe that accident was karma. Let me know what you guys think about that, though. OP, Laura, was a very nice person for looking after Andrea during the recovery phase, and then straight up cutting her off. I want to know what you guys would have done in this exact position. So, drop it down below in the comment section. Thank you for joining me today. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every day. Different topics, different stories, different characters. You never know what's going to happen in this crazy world. Anyways, have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. And of course, remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.